more uncertain than it was 24 hours ago, but if you take the perspective of, for example, a week, then the rebel forces have made significant progress, certainly into Tripoli.
Chris Morris, thank you.
Well, let's speak now to Nabila Ramdani, a journalist who's interviewed both Colonel Gaddafi and his son, Saif al-Islam. She's there in our central London studios. We're grateful for your time. We were seeing Colonel Gaddafi's son only a few minutes ago in the various comments he made last night in Tripoli. Does it surprise you at all, just the defiance we heard from him?
No, not at all. But, you know, what more generally speaking, what the Saif Gaddafi debacle shows is that the propaganda works both ways. We expect it from the Gaddafi regime, but when it comes from the West in the shape of the ICC, when the West joins in, as it were, in the shape of the ICC, it doesn't come as a surprise. But this lack of rigour from one of the most powerful legal organisations in the world doesn't inspire confidence in anyone, and actually comes as a huge embarrassment to the ICC. But the scenes or the footage of Saif Gaddafi touring the city of Tripoli, which is the stronghold of his father's regime, with so much confidence and so much defiance, just shows the determination of the regime to fight for its survival, and the determination to come out victorious in this very bloody battle for Tripoli and indeed for Libya.
So in that sense, it doesn't surprise you that, I mean, it's perhaps no surprise that Tripoli wasn't taken by the rebels inside a day, but it doesn't surprise you that Saif al-Islam is there still in the capital. He's not fled somewhere else.
No, absolutely not. And that's why, you know, the scenes of jubilations and rejoicing that we've seen yesterday, you know, by the rebel forces now seem very premature. The increasingly bloody and desperate battle for Tripoli also shows that the international community will stop at nothing to win wars, even if they are fighting indirectly through massive air assaults and covert special operations. It also shows as I said, the determination of the Gaddafi clan, as it were. We've heard, you know, throughout this conflict, you know, words of defiance issued by Colonel Gaddafi himself, but also by Saif al-Islam, and, you know, they're clinging to their heartland.
You say they're clinging to their heartland, and perhaps it's unfair of me to try to get you to comment on the mindset of Colonel Gaddafi and his son, but even at this stage, I mean, what would be their thinking? I mean, it's over, isn't it?
Well, is it? You know, the latest report I got from Tripoli is that the rebels are actually on the back foot, and we are seeing rebel forces actually withdrawing from the city of Tripoli because they consider it as not being safe. So the balance of power is very hard to establish, and I think what also this battle for Tripoli reveals is that the air campaign, the bombing campaign by the Western air power is not sustainable, because we are dealing, you know, with an area built up, you know, an urban area. And so it's very difficult, it's going to prove very difficult to keep the peace in such an environment, and indeed keep bombing the place indiscriminately.
And does the misinformation regarding Colonel Gaddafi's son yesterday and his capture, what does that tell you about just how chaotic or organised the Transitional Council is?
Well, I think it says more about the media war that is going on. It is essential to any regime to put its message across, and both sides are very publicity aware. And it's based on calculations to affect the morale of the fighters on both sides, and the psychology. It's psychological warfare that's going on at the moment. But what it says, about the ICC in particular, is that it's not the first time that we've heard that the ICC made such a blunder. Remember, not long ago, it made unfounded allegations about Gaddafi distributing Viagra to his soldiers to go about and rape women in Libya, and these unfounded allegations have been proven wrong by various human rights organizations. So it says an awful lot about as I said, the PR war that is going on both sides. Both sides are trying to put a brave face on what turns out to be a pretty bloody and desperate battle.
You talk about a PR war, and as you speak, we're looking at some of the recent pictures of the actual war going on in Tripoli with the plumes of smoke over the buildings. In terms of that transitional council, if we get to the point where we have a definitive end to this, how difficult is it going to be to actually unify this country?
Well, to me it sounds pretty baffling that, you know, you look at the leadership of the National Transitional Council and it is all made up with, you know, former Gaddafi henchmen. So it seems to me pretty, I mean, how is it possible that, you know, some of his former loyalists are able to survive in all this? How credible is the leadership of the National Transitional Council? That's, you know, a crucial point, and it also appears that it is a hugely divided group, and there seems to be a discrepancy between the leadership of the National Transitional Council and the rebels fighting on the ground.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you for your time.